Okay, well, we have, thank you all for coming. We're ready to get started, and we'll begin our meeting and ask Representative Jackson if he'll open us with a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, as we come before you, we give you thanks and honor for this day, Lord. And we ask for your guidance and your wisdom as we go about doing the business for the state of Georgia and the citizens of Georgia, Lord. And we give you all the praise for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, we have before us today Senate Resolution 114 by Senator Hill. And just let me say something. I read this. I'm impressed with it. I think it does a great service. We're able to get this through. So with that being said, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. The measure before you is a joint. That's why we're sitting here. It's a study committee, but it's a joint study committee, and as we know, we got to pass those on both sides. But really, moreover, we're trying to bring attention to this issue, and I frankly stumbled into it a couple of years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, I created a study committee on entrepreneurs and residents just for the Senate only, and I had another study committee I was also chairing at the time, and we ran out of time, and we're looking for people to attend and all. But as I started it, it was extremely popular. On a study committee in the fall and the summer, the room was packed every single time, and the first time I was pretty surprised, because what an entrepreneur in residence is someone who's inventing or starting a small business, and a lot of it's technology related. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but the objective here in the big picture is to make Georgia the most advantageous state, the most friendly state to invent and to come together and to focus it in an intentional way to incentivize entrepreneur development. And so along the way, at one point there was just the ATDC, which is part of the kind of affiliated through Georgia Tech, and there's also, if I get it right, it's SDIC, I think, and it's over at University of Georgia, and that's wrong, but there's a group over at the University of Georgia. There's Tech Village up in Buckhead, and I just came from a good long lunch with Representative Tanner, reconciling our 2 drone bills in a positive way, and the objective there is to create a commission and to make sure we're incentivizing the business development, but also protecting security and privacy all at the same time. Same thing is, if we can create a forum where we can have that public discussion, I think really great things can happen, and that's the reason for this joint study committee. You'll be encouraged, amazed, and surprised all at the same time by the talent we have in Georgia and their desire to be moving in one direction. And if we can help channel that as well as be a resource at the government level and get out of the way when we need to, that is my objective, and to learn from that, and then out of that typically might come either more legislation or getting out of the way or incentivizing, encouraging through a variety of things where we can make Georgia the best place in the nation to invent cool stuff, hire more people, young people, older people, and do all that. I went out to Dell Labs, computers, whatever, at the time a couple years ago, and it's amazing. I mean, we had guys that are basically inventing private spacecraft, and there's a lot of need. I don't live in this industry, but it's amazing when you start looking at it and learning about it. And so that was the purpose. And so after coming out of all that, the net after doing the study committee and frankly not finishing it, one of the ahas is, why just limit this to the Senate? Let's do this jointly so we can all join together and find ways to, as a state, encourage the continuation or maybe catapult it to another level. So once again, it's just simple. It's coming together, studying the entrepreneur in residence, which is an interesting term, so that's why it's all defined in here, and streamlining and improving the government procedures that impact entrepreneurs and facilitate that. Thank you for.
You have some questions, if you would.
Okay, sure.
Number 9, Representative Kendrick.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a great idea. I did have a couple of questions. So, just so I understand it, we already have an entrepreneurship in residence program, and this would form the joint committee to study what we already have. Is that my understanding?
No, we really don't have anything formal. I mean, there's some. Georgia Tech is doing some great work, and University of Georgia and others. It's just it's happening because it should, and what we're trying to do is to create a forum to bring it all together.
Okay, so the joint study committee would have hearings to talk about how to create the entrepreneurship in residence program.
If we want to create a formal program, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's studying. We're serious of just hearings over the summer, fall to study it, and out of that can come any recommendation that the joint committee chooses.
I'm trying to see.
We can create a formal. The sky's the limit. We can come together and say we don't need to do anything. I mean, study committees come up with all sorts of recommendations, or they can advance it and say we should create a formal entrepreneur in residence program within all our university systems, and we should do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give ideas what X, Y, and Z are because I don't know. But we should do X, Y, and Z, and the committee would recommend every university should have one, and you should fund it, you should not fund it, the private sector, whatever. I'm making up stuff, but don't read into that anything. We should do this across the board because we want to, if you want to be a creator, inventor in the United States, we want to say, hey, Georgia's the best place to do that. One of my sons just finished college, and he started out he ended up changing his major. It's a short version. He took a business entrepreneurship class one summer between his junior and senior year, and he started, he didn't know what he wanted to do. Now he's, got a great job, thankfully. But that's the light bulb that turned on for him, is the entrepreneurship business program, and went, wow, that's what I want to be doing. And he was studying political science. He thought he might want to do philosophy. It's like, and so now what he's doing is he's doing entrepreneurship stuff. He's living in California and doing stuff. And all I'm saying is it's like with drones. I mean, the more I hear about it and learn about it, the more I know I don't know a lot about it. We're trying to create a forum and a mechanism so the legislature can get on one page so we can be supportive.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm still trying to understand what are we studying. If we don't have a formal entrepreneurship in residence program, is your objective to get the committee together, and then who would you be hearing from if we don't have a formal program?
Technology Association of Georgia, the Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Georgia University of Georgia. Here it is, simplistically. But have you been on a study committee before?
Mm-hmm.
I apologize for. Basically, at the will of the chairman of the committee, you have a lot of discretion. Here it says to identify within government inefficient and overlapping programs that negatively impact entrepreneurs trying to start or expand a business, and to recommend solutions. What are we doing? What can we help? How can we get out of the way? The next is to serve as a visible advocate and mentor for entrepreneurs within government, a point of contact who knows and understands their needs and concerns. A lot of times they say the government's the biggest problem. It takes us forever to start a business because your regulatory process is lengthy. You may know a whole lot about that, but we as a state may just be unintentionally getting in the way. And a number of years ago, I introduced legislation to allow our pension funds to invest in alternative investments if they wanted to. There were 20 states that prohibited that. We ended up being the last state. It's a choice. It's not a mandate. People would say all day long, if you came to Georgia, if you invented something in Georgia, if you ask Representative Dudgeon, if you come to Georgia for years, you couldn't find any money here because we were not friendly to that. And now we're a pretty good place to do I don't know if that's a good answer for you.
Good.
So
The room will be full of people, and typically in study committees, you don't find a whole lot of attendees behind me and in front of you.
so it would be more, it wouldn't be necessarily finding out how entrepreneurs can work better in government. It's like, because we don't have sort of a formal program set up, like you said, but just generally speaking with different groups to see how we can make it better to do business as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, the second thing you said. The phrase is something we didn't create. Entrepreneur residence. You're like, where are they in residence? You know, that's the kind of. I mean, when I first, I've been there. I'm just like, I'm in kindergarten and you're in nursery school, and I'm. Bottom line is, I'm still learning. I don't know anything, but I was like, so where are they going to live? You know, that's. Where are they living? What's the residence? That's not the purpose. It's the phrase that's used across the United States called entrepreneur residence.
Okay.
And we're trying to, the residences is basically not actual living necessarily, but to embed into, like in Europe, you go to Germany. I'm talking too much here, I know, but you go to Germany and they have what's called clusters. And they realize if you bring the money people together, the education environment, and the inventors together, you can create a lot of good things. But if they're haphazard and they don't know about each other, I go invent something, I don't know how to get it to market, then I'm going to have a problem if I can't get money. So they create what they literally called clusters, and they created clusters in university environments so that we're literally right across the hall from each other. Bottom line is there's a whole lot we don't know, and we don't know what we can be doing. I was very surprised when I did it, when I started it a couple of years ago, and there's a tremendous amount of interest in it from the education, entrepreneurship, financial communities, research communities.
Thank you, Representative Kendrick.
Good questions. I mean, I had all the same questions a year ago.
We'll have quite a few more, Senator.
I will make my answers shorter than I have been.
Representative Rakestraw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wholeheartedly support what you're doing. On the back of this, the resolution says it'll be abolished December 2015. Is that how it passed out of the Senate?
You know, the House is usually brighter than the Senate.
Okay. But it says it'll be abolished, so I don't know if that's something that we need to...
We'll address that momentarily.
In all seriousness, that was obviously an oversight.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for reading through that. Sir? The legislation was introduced last year in hopes that it would have passed last year, and I can't remember.
Yeah, so, but I wanted to make a statement about, what you're talking about. I mean, some of the colleges do have like business incubators where they're helping, entrepreneurs develop their ideas and move it into the real world. But I agree with what you said about, we need to look at ways to get government out of the way. And there's a couple of books that I want to recommend to this committee and everyone that's involved with business in our state, because the first one is Physics of the Future. And everybody thinks we're in the information age, but we're in the age of biotech, and if we can figure out a way to position Georgia to seize biotech, it will carry us economically for the next 50 years. And I think that that's something that this committee ought to really look at. How can we seize biotech, and because the information businesses, they've reached the maturation, so the growth that's going to be coming in business is going to be coming out of biotech. The other book is one that Newt Gingrich wrote. I think it's called Prison Guards of the Past and Pioneers of the Future, and he talks about how government is stifling business and all these innovations that are coming out. They're failing to reach the market and fruition because of government regulations being in the way and impeding their ability to make it. And so I think that whoever's on this committee, I would urge them to read both of those books, because it's a wealth of information as a starting point to go, okay, let's look at some ideas to help get government out of the way and expand and support biotech to carry Georgia into the future. Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to make those comments, but I support what you're doing, and thank you for bringing this bill.
Yeah, there will be no opposition from the university systems. It's actually the opposite. They're excited. They're looking for us to be interested, frankly, in ability to even enhance what they do. They're doing a lot of things very well right now.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea, too. It was the nomenclature that just threw us, because we're used to hearing it be called a business incubator.
Right.
And is there any difference between the two?
I don't know the answer to your question, but I think there's a slight difference. The incubator is more, I think an incubator is just one step beyond an entrepreneur. How do you get the idea? The incubator is more of that cluster environment, and but
That Buckhead Center is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is, and I'll tell you, I mean, y'all have said it, I've said it, is when I learned about it from going out to Dell, and I'm like, so where's the dormitory, type thing.
Yeah.
But we use a phrase because that's a phrase that the industry they understand that.
Okay.
We didn't make it up. They understand the phraseology.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me point out something. In your folders, you just have there's a page missing, Senator.
Is there? Okay.
That we have to our bill.
It's 3 pages? Or is it?
Yeah, we just have front and back. We go from line 21 to line 54.
Oh, okay.
So
I see why I had some questions
yeah,
there.
there.
And if I'm trying to cool off, I've had the privilege of being back and forth across the street 4 times since 10 o'clock this morning.
Representative Sharper.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very much in support of this. Being an entrepreneur, small business owner for over 30 years,
Wow.
there's a lot of things that we see even on a local level. And what we've started in our city is like a one-stop shop where, you get all the government, entities that you're going to have to deal with and actually start your business. And you talk to them first. It's like a one-step program. And I think these ideas can be brought up in this. And also, like they're talking about the incubators. But I think still today, the government does get in the way a little bit. Sometimes when they have the LDRs, different regulations, it really hurts these small businesses, because a lot of people, sometimes they just step out, get a lease, start a business. Then next thing you know, the regulations come. They shut you down for about 30 days. And if you don't have a lot of money, those 30 days are very detrimental to you, and your business is gone before it even starts. So, I'm hoping that once we can get this in place, I would love to be a part of this study committee. And because I got over 30 years of experience to let you know what businesses go through and what I've seen happen from the government side. So I have both sides that I've been a part of. So I appreciate you bringing this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Jackson.
Yeah, am I late on? I'll get it.
Oh.
I'll ask the question. Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, thank you for bringing this bill forward. I had a question about on line 13 about placing experienced entrepreneurs in government for limited periods of time. Where would you get the pool of entrepreneurs from?
If I may turn to your colleague, he probably has a better answer than I would.
I think once we get the information out, if we go with the study committee and you put the information out that you're looking and soliciting entrepreneurs and small business owners to be a part of it, you have a lot of them that will like to kind of volunteer so they can actually get more understanding on this. So I think, like I say, once we can put it all together, you're going to be able to solicit people, that want to be a part of this.
Further inquiry, Mr. Chairman. I'm from the rural. The reason I asked that question, I want to make sure we have rural entrepreneurs included. A lot of times rural areas are left out, and I want to make sure that we get rural people involved.
As the representative just spoke before your first question, I was going to actually add, just because we're sitting here in Atlanta, Georgia today, I mean, as chairing other study committees in the past, I find a tremendous benefit of having hearings around the state. Sometimes it's tough on the Capitol staff, and you know, with the logistics are always hard. But I've had 8 finance hearings, and probably 4 of those have been outside the Capitol and other places across the state of Georgia. So I'm just using that by way of example to. The greatest ideas probably come outside of this building some days as opposed to inside. So we want to be incentivizing, frankly, all 159 counties to be, and create that opportunity there, because that's one of the reasons I advocate strongly for telecommunications and connectivity, because I want an individual in Hazelhurst, Georgia, to be able to start a business and stay in Hazelhurst and operate and successfully make as well as they, sky's the limit there, as opposed to think that once you graduate from high school or whatever, you can't ever go back because the opportunities are not there. I'd rather, and whether that's entrepreneur or whatever, and I'm concerned about that in our state and for our small communities.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cannon.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to ask you a question regarding the same line 13, regarding placing experienced entrepreneurs in government for limited periods of time. What is the time commitment and number of entrepreneurs that you have in mind for this study committee?
Well, once again, the study committee is made up of the appointees, as it's referenced here, for a handful of hearings. The study committee would then come up with a recommendation to answer, frankly, your questions. Essentially, what you try to do is, the reason for the temporary placement, pretty much on a volunteer basis, is our bureaucracy is not intending to get it wrong, but sometimes probably by not having the experience in creating a new business and being entrepreneurial, they do get it wrong. I think everyone's teachable and interested in being teachable, so that's probably the voluntary side of the limited time period. I don't have a number, and I don't have a length of time. It may be for one day. It may be for a variety of time. It's a coordination, but I think that's one of the things the study committee would explore is, okay, what agencies do a better job or worse job of this, and let's get some guys in there, men and women in there, to be supportive and helpful. It might be like Secretary of State's office. I mean, they've streamlined some things. I understand they still have more room for improvement, but they've got a lot of professional licensing boards that sometimes stand in the way.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Bruce.
I think we got an expert over here. I'm interested in hearing from him.
Senator,
Either way. Yes, sir.
I too agree that this is a good idea. And in the spirit of it being a good idea to foster and encourage people to come and do business in Georgia, and for people to work together, all of the things that you said, in that spirit, I would hope that you would also be looking at all of these different bills and laws and things that people are introducing to separate folks. The so-called religious freedom, the English only, and all these other things that actually separate people, right, and discourage businesses from wanting to come here. I hope that your committee, this joint committee, will address those issues too, as to how they impact business in Georgia.
If I'm appointed, I'd be more than interested in asking the entrepreneurs in the business community, hey, how can we help and what can we do to get out of the way?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bruce. Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this. Representative Kendricks probably asked a lot of the questions that we were pondering, because I was trying to understand what exactly you were trying to do, and I gave one of my assistants a really hard time as I was drilling him through trying to understand this. Very much pro-entrepreneur, but by profession, I'm an accountant. So, the steps, kind of get
Right.
jobbled. So I understand that the study committee, you're exploring whatever you're exploring. But what I'm not understanding is maybe the process. So is the thought that once the committee is formed, that you all would dialogue about what it is you are trying to do, and then maybe that step where the entrepreneur goes into the government facility to do some work. I'm just trying to understand the process. That's kind of the first
Right.
part of trying to wrap this around my head.
The bill passes,
Mhm.
gets signed by the governor, the appointments are made, the co-chairs are appointed, they decide on the first meeting, and there's a lot more work for the chairman as opposed to the members. They decide on the first meeting, which also involves who should we be talking to, who should we invite in to testify. Okay, we have a handful of hearings. Let's try to map out the first two. What are some key topics, interesting topics to reach out, and then we'll reach out for witnesses, or people to come in, industry, whatever. What's going on? What's already going on? What's already going on?
Okay.
And then at that point, you identify what you think you don't know, and you try to bring more people in to talk to us about different topics. Like, okay, what's going on in the university systems? What about the research facilities? How hard is it to raise capital? What are the impediments? What are the things what are the impediments in Georgia and law and government and all that? And then you basically come together and decide to have a report, create a report. The committee would not be putting people in residence. The committee would only be recommending that, hey, we have 4 recommendations, we have 24 recommendations.
Okay.
At that point, the legislature gets to decide, like any time, to move forward and maybe Representative Bruce says, I'm going to run with this and we're going to go hard on it, and the rest of us go, let's support him. Or maybe nobody wants to, or maybe everybody on the committee is interested. I mean, we don't know yet.
Gotcha.
But they'll come out with, bottom line is the committee's formed, they'll have hearings, they'll have interested parties, and typically the more it gets publicized, the more groups, I'll call it, come to the chairman and say, hey, I'd like to talk about this as well. We
Okay.
come up with a recommendation, the recommendation comes to the legislature, and the legislature chooses.
Gotcha.
What the-
That was very, very helpful. Now, in working
I got
with
real detailed there.
No, yeah, I love it. I love it.
So you like all that.
Yeah. But in working with entrepreneurs
Mhm.
and being in this environment for quite a bit of time, one of the things that kind of gets confused in this environment is what is a small business. So as you all are, I guess, studying, if we're having a small business conversation with SBA, they're looking at the minimum income, which at one point was $250,000, which was considered a small business. But when you come in some environments, when we start talking about small businesses, they're thinking more of the micro business.
Right.
So because this has small business, are we being literal as to what a small business is, or are we looking at people with business ideas that may be startups? I just want to make sure.
I'm going to ask a question you
Okay.
might laugh at, but what do you want it to be? What do you want it's a study committee, so we're not, whatever you want to define it to
Okay.
be, because we're not bound by, at the end of the day, the only thing you're bound by is you have X number of people appointed, and you have X number of committees, and then you can frankly do with anything that's legal. You can talk about anything that's legal and come up with a report,
Okay.
and that's simplistically because it's a study committee.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a bill, then I'll put my lawyer cap on and start looking at commas and semicolons. But at the end of the day, is we're trying to create the framework, because the end result is we want to make sure we're doing the best job to incentivize creation of businesses and and to help give embryonic businesses or businesses that have been going along the way, give them new wings, because we find out that we're messing stuff up and we can help them more. So we're not just creating new businesses, we're trying to help that whole entrepreneurship. A lot of other states are doing it. Many states have formal programs in place, and you'll hear about all that through the study committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had a pretty good exchange on this at this point. There's a couple of follow-ups. We're going to allow the follow-ups, but let's make them as brief as possible because we need to move forward. With that being said, Representative Sharper.
Okay, I'm going to be real brief so I can shine some light on the whole thing, most questions I've heard. All right, when you're looking at this, the entrepreneur, you're not looking so much at a business. You're looking at an individual. And that individual may have a business that brings in $25,000 or $250,000 or even $1 million. That's what this is basically saying, the entrepreneur. Okay, and talking about what you can do it in a one-day situation where that one person goes into your local government. He can go into permitting for an hour. He can go into zoning for 1 hour. He can go into utilities for 1 hour. He can go in these different places in one day and find out on their end what they have to do and their requirements, and you have a better look on this. Study committee, the audience that I think you would probably have at something like this, you have your small business owners and your big business owners because those are your entrepreneurs. You're also going to have maybe your chamber there. You're going to have your city and county government people there, staff people, and that's the audience that you will have to get all this information on the pros and cons. And after that point, then you can decide how many days this person can come in to be in a particular place and get information. So I think we don't need to get to where we're thinking small business. We're talking about the individual that haven't even started a business yet. So I just want to add that in.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Representative Rakestraw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, in the Red Taupe Watch that we did, we went around the state and we had hearings and we heard from, business owners. And so, I think this is a great idea. And I wanted to echo what Representative Sharper said earlier. When business gets in the way and shuts down, it's not just the money that you have to carry it, but you inhibit a customer base that they've spent time building and developing. And if it's a highly competitive business, when they lose those customers, then you've really harmed a business, a lot of times irreparably, because it's hard to rebuild that customer stream. And so I think we have to look at how to also, protect existing businesses, how to get them to that next level, how to make sure that they're, able to retain customers, and that government's not just coming in and shutting them down for whatever arbitrary reason. And so maybe getting the entrepreneurs to go on the insides, because some of it is the rulemaking authority that some of these agencies have, where it doesn't go through the legislature, and we're unaware of how many rules and regs have we created on these businesses by giving that authority to these government entities to make the rules and regs that these businesses have to live by, and where are the conflicts, because there's so many agencies. I mean, we found a lot in Department of Human Services between federal and state and all the different agencies they had to report to. I mean, they had books and books and books, and I'm not even sure we solved and unraveled that mess. So this would be another opportunity to look at things like that. So I just wanted to
explore all that all those issues.
So and I'd like to be a part of that if I could be. But so I want to make a motion, Mr. Chair, if the time is appropriate, that we do pass and take a vote on this.
You may want to amend that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Do you want it to end next year or the year after?
I defer to y'all's discretion. If we go further out, we would may want to extend the number of dates, because you're right here on line 65. Typically, study committees, a typical study committee, if it goes between now and the end of this year, it's usually 4 or 5 days if we go down out to 2017, and we can decide what we want. I mean, there's no rule on this. We decide to go out to 2017, then I would suggest that you may want to consider making up a number 8 days total, so you can. But
with it being an election year and so many issues to study, I think it may take longer.
that may be a good point.
5
Whereas,
years to really look in depth at everything.
Okay, we're about to entertain a motion on the pardon.
Wouldn't it make more sense to just make it go to the end of the year, and that way, if something comes out of it, and the legislation could be introduced in the next session, as opposed to dragging it out? Because if you drag it out, then you won't be introducing the legislation during the session.
Okay. We've been informed that this committee would need to end in 2016, Senator.
I'm just responding to y'all's questions.
Okay.
I mean, to your point, Representative, you could re-up it.
Yeah. All right. We've had a motion that let me say this. We know we have an issue we're going to have to amend to get the corrective date into it. The corrective date, upon advice of council, will be this committee shall stand abolished on December the 1st, 2016. So we need a motion to that effect to amend. We'll have a motion.
Should we make it the 31st, December 31st, 2015?
No, the motions by Representative Pizzo.
When you get done with the elections in November, then everybody really starts to.
We have a motion on the floor and a second to amend the resolution for an abolishing date of December the 1st, 2016. All in favor of that amended? All right. Now we will vote on an amended bill resolution. All in favor? Do we have a motion on an amended resolution? Have a second. Motion and second that this bill or this resolution pass as amended with the abolishing date of December 1st, 2016. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Senator, who would carry this bill on your?
Representative Braddock or somebody, whoever. I do have the discretion of the chair, but I have not spoken directly. But if
Representative Kirby has asked to carry it, do you still want to carry that? Okay. Representative Kirby, fine with you, Senator?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh.
Ma'am? Yes. And thank you so much. And to answer the question on the, thank you, sir. Thank you, Representatives. To answer the question out there is, I don't think we want to have a report out by December 31st, but
before we leave,
mostly we want to.
Legislative Council said she would make sure we have all the lines on the bill before it goes
all
to
the
the
lines.
We had a page missing on our copy.
Right. The LC number I have is 287427.
We have the right resolution, Senator. We just didn't get a second page of it in our copy.
I think it's from y'all, right?
It is.
We don't create bills. Legislative Council creates.
This is the copy the Secretary of the Senate provided us, front and back.
Do you have the 0102 or 01 copy from the Senate?
We got LC 287427. But just the second page is missing.
I mean, I'm new to the process, but I usually don't carry the 0102.
No, you shouldn't have to. There's just an error in the copy that came from the Senate, and I'll make sure that all the lines are present when we produce the substitute. That's all.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You need to have the bill before.
Oh, you had asked him?
Yeah,
There must be.
I didn't know that.
Somebody has the 0102 copies.
We didn't need those.
I'll get my office to check with the Senate Science and Technology Committee, or no, I think it came out of Economic Development, because someone's got the 0102 copies, and it's either your secretary or their secretary, most likely. I mean, the original, whatever one the Secretary of the Senate or the Clerk of the House keeps, and you would have the difference.
Thank y'all. We're dismissed. We're adjourned.